Amen. The lectionary provides that the first Sunday in Lent always addresses the temptation of Jesus in the wilderness. This year we have Luke's version of that story. But all three temptation stories immediately follow on the baptism of Jesus. So the very first thing this does is disabuse us of any notion that because we are baptized, we somehow are freed from temptation, that we are set apart, that we have a unique place in the life of the world. If Jesus himself, after his baptism, was tempted, then we too are not exempt from temptation. Now, a book that I reread every Lent, because it's just one that speaks to my heart, the author, Gail Webb, makes a very helpful point in which he says, you know, the good news, he's referring to the temptation story, the good news is that at times in our lives we feel so overwhelmed. Everything is coming at us from every direction. We have no firm ground to stand on. The only thing we can see is defeat and despair and darkness. Where are we going to turn for help? At times it seems as though when it rains, it's raining just on me. And it's not just rain, but it is a ferocious storm, and I don't know how I will get through it. The author points out the good news about the temptation story is that we are reminded that even when things seem so totally out of control, remember that we have only three adversaries. And the fact that we can limit those who are over and against us to three means that we have some agency in grappling with all the temptations and disappointments and sin in our lives. Now, the three are pretty formidable adversaries, that is true: the flesh, the world, and the devil. But at least there are only three. We'll start with the devil, and we'll end with the devil. We begin with the devil because, you see, the devil is the great deceiver, and the greatest deception that Satan has ever been able to effect, and we in this modern world are particularly prone to this, is, oh, the devil, for heaven's sake, that's just hyperbole, that's outmoded, there's no devil, leave that alone. Aha! Once we have fallen for that deception, then the devil is freed up to do whatever the devil wants to do, because of course if the devil doesn't exist, then we don't have to deal with that phenomena. Now, whatever language you want to use for the devil, and I'll tell you why I prefer the biblical vision, it is absolutely true that there is an organizing principle of evil. There clearly is more just than problems in the world, but clearly the love of God is being actively opposed. And it's being such that we are drawn into its orbit if we're not careful. So the second thing I really want you to hold on to is this. Remember that no one is inherently evil. The reason for that is because our God is a good God, and God created us in his image, and every human being has had the light and love of God breathed into our very existence. So we must not ever say that person is evil. Not true. It is true, however, that we are drawn either into God's orbit or into Satan's orbit, the devil's orbit, on a daily basis. And it is also true that unfortunately there are human beings who have gone down so far, descending into darkness, that evil has totally co-opted them, and human beings become agents of evil. There's no other way to really grapple with the amount of damage and destruction that we human beings are capable of, and that we have demonstrated throughout human history. But no person is evil. That's really important to hang on to. Third, the biblical picture is that devil is Lucifer, the angel who is cast out of heaven, who is cast down to the earth. Remember the cosmic, and admittedly, this is wonderful language. It's not meant to be specific. It's meant to open up the truth. And there's this waging battle in heaven, and the archangel Michael succeeds. So it's important to remember that, because the world wants to separate out into a good God and a bad God. And they're having this duking it out, and we get to be on the good God's side, so therefore we're going to be okay at the end. That's simply not what Christianity believes. What Christianity understands is that a loving God has created everything to be good. That our whole purpose in life is to learn how to love ourselves and one another with a depth of love that the world will never understand. And yet this cosmic force is actively working to draw us away from that truth, to take us away from love into another place. So we'll come back to the devil, but let's go to the flesh, because the flesh and the world really provide the arenas where we have to figure ourselves out. Now the flesh, the sins of the flesh, are quite apparent to all of us: lust, gluttony, sloth, and they're also visible ones. They're the ones that we can go, can you believe she did that? Oh, terrible, terrible. When in fact, it is the sins of the Spirit that are really dangerous. Now, don't get me wrong. Gluttony is not good for our health. Not honoring the way in which God has provided us to exercise responsible use of our sexuality gets us and other people in trouble. But those things can be addressed. What's harder to address are those sins of pride, those sins of wrath, those sins of envy, those sins where our spirit gets consumed and we become a darker version of ourself instead of being filled with light, instead of being the people who understand that, yes, it's hard to navigate your way through life, but we know that because Jesus has successfully done it, we then who are baptized into his death and resurrection are not contending with all this in our own strength. That our hope is not in our ability to become a better person. Our hope is in the one who says, I love you unconditionally as you are. However, I would love it if you would begin to finally address some of the things that are holding you back from becoming fully who you are meant to be. Now, I said I'd end with the devil, because there are times, and the history of the church demonstrates it, that there are persons who have to contend with the devil one-on-one, when apparently our growth into the full stature of Christ. Does that ring a bell? It should, because every time we do baptism, parents are asked, will you help this child grow into the full stature of Christ? That's what all of us are supposed to do. We're all children of God, and we're all supposed to grow into the full stature of Christ. None of us ever does it perfectly, and none of us ever gets there, but we're supposed to stay at it. And we're not supposed to stay at it in our own strength. We're supposed to stay at it in the community of the church, of persons who understand I'm not perfect and I may disagree with you about this or about that, but I'll try to understand so that we don't get divided, so that we don't lose that essential sense of each of us is a beloved child. Let's see it in each other. Let's try to do it. So, as I said, the thing about it is that if you get too saint-like, the devil takes notice. You know, when Willette Vogt, who was the parish secretary when I arrived, one of the real saints of God, but when we had our first controversy at St. Mary's, I can't remember what it was about now, but it was a big controversy about something. And she just looked at me and said, Andrew, don't get too concerned about all that. All that means is that what we're doing is disturbing the devil. And so the devil has come to pay particular attention on us to try to get us to go back to that nice, safe little place where we're irrelevant. So we live in difficult times. We don't see things the same way. But the question is, will we be the kind of people who always look to God and then try to manifest it in our life with one another? It isn't easy work, but it's God-given work. So I encourage you that if you find yourself confronted and unable to move forward, don't stand in your own sadness, your own disappointment, your own sin. Confession is available. Talking to your fellow Christians, members of this congregation. We don't have to be alone. We don't have to face the darkness in our own strength. Amen.